It's finally the mid-year book recommendation tag, and I have tons of books that I want to show you guys. And I am a big reader. If you're new here, I've read about 68 books by the time this video goes live, and so I have tons of recs to give you guys with all of my favorite books, some that you've heard about and some that you haven't. So if you like book videos like this, make sure to subscribe because I upload videos 3 days a week and all about books. And yeah, let's just get in this video. I have tons of recs that you guys are going to just literally fall in love with. The first question in this little book recommendation tag list is, what is the best book you've read so far in 2023? I actually got this list from Sarah Caroli, but I think like tons of other booktubers have also been doing this little like mid-year like book recommendation wrap up slash tag thing. But the best book that I've read so far in 2023 is Before I Let Go by Kennedy Ryan. And I feel like being introduced to her writing has just been one of my absolute favorite things. I've read Flow by her, and I also picked up so many other books by her that I plan on reading because her writing literally pulls you in. I think that I really like this book because it's very rare that you get to read about a marriage, and this is actually about a couple, and they kind of are like on the rocks, and they are divorced, but by on the rocks I mean like they're trying to figure out how to navigate like being parents but not being together, and they end up like being connected in some way that like they keep coming back to each other, but they have this big thing that really tore them apart, and the thing that tore them apart is valid. And so I don't know, I feel like I could really feel the grief of the characters in this story, and I really was just pulled in and I didn't want to let go. And so I picked up so many books by this author, and I feel like one of my favorite things about finding a good book is when you find not only a good book but good writing, and her writing will literally pull you in. I do think that this writing in this book is a tad different than the other books that I've read by her, and I think it's just because she has a little bit more description in this book in comparison to other books where she has a little bit more dialogue. But even still, I feel like this was a 5 out of 5 read for me, and I just don't have very many 5 out of 5 like recs, so I love this one. The best sequel that I've read so far in 2023 is Terms and Conditions by Lauren Asher, and this is the second book in the Dreamland Billionaire series. I love this series so much, and I rated this series, the whole series, 4 stars, and I feel like for me, my rating system is like a 3 is average, a 4 is above average, 4.5 is like, it's very, very close to a 5. It could be a 5-star, but it's not because maybe I don't want to read it again, which is one of my like criteria for a 5-star read. Like I have to want to read it again in the future. But I feel like this was so close to being like a 4.5, just the whole series itself, but this book specifically. And I think a lot of people said that they liked the third book in this series, but personally I like the second book, and maybe it's because like the main character Iris was like a woman of color, or maybe it was because they had a like marriage of convenience type situation. I don't know what it was, but their love I literally was obsessed with, and I just absolutely ate this book up. Again, this story is about a couple, and pretty much there are 3 brothers in this series, and all of them have these tasks that they have to complete because their father is, or their grandfather passed away, but he's like not allowing them to get money from their will if they don't do these 3 tasks. And so Declan's task is to get married and have children, and he pretty much wants to just like have this like arranged marriage, but like no one will marry him because he's just so grumpy. And Iris is his assistant, and so she is just like, you know what, maybe I will like help you out. And so that's kind of how this started, and they really blossomed into something beautiful, and it's such a good book. New release that I have not read yet, but I want to, and this is one I've really like been excited about, I just haven't gotten around to. It is Highly Suspicious and Unfairly Cute by Talia Hibbert. This is about 2 best friends, and I think they go to camp together, but they're actually ex-best friends. They used to be best friends, but they're not anymore. And you don't really know why, like they were pulled apart as friends, and you figure it out along the way. And I think the guy is like a popular guy, and the girl is like not popular, and she feels like he stopped being her friend, I think, because she's not popular, but I think that there's like something else underlying. And they're at this camp, and they have to do these like challenges, I'm pretty sure, and they end up like being put together. And I love books where like people are put together and they have to like be in the same space. I don't know, just books like that are so fun. My most anticipated release for the second half of the year is by Laura Nolan, and the book is called If Only I Had Told Her, and this is the sequel to If He Had Been With Me, and that book was another book that I rated 5 stars. I feel like some people don't like that book because it is YA, and it definitely gives YA, but I think what I love most about it is, like, I wish I could have had a book like that when I was in like high school or middle school, because it's all about like finding yourself and figuring out who you are and being comfortable in your own skin and being comfortable with like people not liking things that you like and you still doing it anyway. And I feel like that's such a good, powerful message, and it is such a sad, sad story. Like, it will literally break your heart, and you know it's gonna break your heart from the very beginning, and you're just like taken through the book, just like feeling so emotional already. And I don't know, it was very good, and I'm really excited to read the book that's coming out in October by Laura Nolan, which is from Finney's perspective. And the book is about Autumn and Finn, who they both are or were best friends and grew up and they were neighbors. And then Autumn's kind of like quirky, and then Finn is like popular, and so as they get older they like drift apart, and they literally drift apart because like people think it's weird that they're friends. And there's just, it's such a sad book, but I cannot wait for the new book coming out at the end of the year. A book that was absolutely the biggest surprise, like truly blew my socks off, was this book by Taylor Jenkins Reid. It's called Carrie Soto is Back, and I think I was surprised to love this book because honestly, I liked Taylor Jenkins Reid's writing, but I wasn't like obsessed with it. And I had read One True Loves by her, and I was just kind of like, oh, it's good, like, you know, whatever. I read Daisy Jones and the Six, and I knew everyone liked Daisy Jones and the Six, and I also read Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, which I also knew everyone liked. So I just was like, maybe she's like a one-off type of author where like only certain popular books are good. And when this book came out, I was like, you know what, let me pick it up. I just have heard good things about it, and let me read it. I ate this book up, and personally, I'm going to say I do not think you'll like this book if, one, you're not competitive, and I think it's a bit like added bonus if you do like sports, which I never really like played super competitive sports or anything. Like, I played like soccer in like middle school, but I can understand the feeling of like wanting something so bad that you just like put everything into. I feel like being a business owner, like an entrepreneur, like those kind of have like the same feelings where you're just like putting everything and you're all into something and hoping to get the best results. And this book is about Carrie Soto, who she is ruthless, absolutely ruthless. She is coming out of retirement because someone is trying to take her title. She's a tennis player, and she's like, absolutely not, that's not happening. So she just works her butt off, and she's like one of the oldest tennis players to try to like come back and like win the like record that she like had initially, or like make sure this other person doesn't break the record. And I really liked it because she is someone who is kind of unlikable, but also I think I like that because I feel that women are not allowed to be unlikable in books. I feel like men can be unlikable. Like, we fall in love with the grumpy guy, like we fall in love with like the mean person, like, you know, all these characteristics like we're not obsessed with, but then somehow they end up being these like heroines. And I feel like women in books especially have to be so perfect to be like well liked or for the book to be like enjoyable. So I really love that she was such a strong character. She kind of didn't really care what other people thought, and I don't know, I really love that. So I ended up reading Malibu Rising by this author, and I'm going to continue to read more of her books because this one really hooked me. Favorite new author, which is like a debut author, it is Mayoko May, and I read Take a Chance. This is literally a 60-page novella, and I ate this up, like absolutely gobble ate it up, and I really loved it. It is very rare that I like novellas, period. Like, I've read so many novellas and I just usually don't like it because I don't feel like I get enough storyline, the writing's not that good, and I was like, you know what, let me try this new author. Love this book, and it's actually set in Mexico, which I feel like makes it even more dreamy. And these two actually knew each other in high school, and they end up like happening to be in the same like location on the beach, and they haven't seen each other in literally 9 years, so they're like rekindling, and it's so good. I wish I could get more of them. And I am definitely gonna be looking out for this author and what like she comes out with, because her writing is so captivating. Like, I want to know more about them, but I also feel like she had a very well-rounded story in literally 60 pages. I don't feel like there was anything that was missing, which is so rare in a novella. The only thing I wanted was more because it was so good. So I definitely am gonna look out for this author, and she is one of my new favorites. A book that made me cry is one I think I've talked about more than, I don't know, I don't want to say any book, but I've definitely talked about it a lot, and it is Magnolia Parks by Jessa Hastings. I rated this book 4.5 stars, and I literally only rated it 4.5 stars because personally I don't think I'm going to read it again, but maybe I will. Like, once I finish the series, I might want to go through it again in the future. It is so good. I cry in this book, not necessarily just because of the characters, but I cried for past Shaughnessy who did not know her value and who acted similarly to Magnolia in some ways, in a sense of like not letting go of someone when you need to let go of them, and like expecting them to be better and treat you better, and they just like don't. And I feel like high school me was so invested in guys who, I don't know, they just like were not giving me the time of day. Like, I remember there was this guy in high school who I was like talking to him, and we were like almost dating, but like not quite. We were gonna go to like different schools, and we weren't really sure if we like wanted to date. And me more so, because I wasn't sure if he was like serious. And I remember literally being in his car, and his like phone like slid down like the side of the like console, and I picked it up and his phone was open, and it was literally on a text that literally, it was open on a text from a girl that said I love you, and he had said I love you back. And I literally remember being like so upset, and I saw it, and he was like, well, we're not together, like we've just been talking for like 8-9 months or whatever. And I remember being like, you know what, he's right, like we're not together, we're not like official, like I can't really say anything about it. Like, no, girl, stand up, like stand up. So the whole time I was reading this, I was getting so emotional because Magnolia puts up with so much, and then she kind of does like tit for tat, and at the end of the book I just literally could not stop crying. And I actually shared my reaction in one of my videos, and it just so sad. I think everyone will not like this book because it is about a toxic relationship. Like, you kind of root for them, like you want them to be better, but then part of you is like, okay, we just like are over it. They're like going back and forth so much. Also, it gives Gossip Girl vibes in a sense that they are rich, and they also are like traveling all over the place, have like private jets and stuff. Someone actually asked on Instagram, like the age range of this book, and I literally have no idea. So comment below if you guys know the age range. I know they're not school age, but I really don't know how old they're supposed to be. I assume like maybe a little younger than me, but I literally don't know. But it literally is so good. I love this series. If you like toxic relationships and reading about them, you'll love this one. A book that made me happy is one that actually just recently came out, and it is called Rhythm and Muse by India Hill Brown. I got this as an advanced reader's copy, and I haven't actually gotten like tons of advanced reader edition books, but I actually might buy this again just because I don't necessarily know if I want like this on the front of the book. But I love this book so much. It gives me like Lynn Painter, Sarah Adams, like super like wholesome, very good, happy vibes. It's about this guy who, he has this like dream of being with this girl. He's like always really been into her, but she's like super confident, or at least so he thinks. And she has this radio show, and she asks for people to submit like a song. And so he submits a song that could be like her intro to her like radio show, or maybe podcast, I think. And she like gets the song submission, but he made it and sent it in anonymously, and so she doesn't know who it is. So he has to kind of get the courage to tell her like, hey, it's me, like I did the song. But he's so nervous the whole book. He's so insecure, and it's very rare that I feel like you read about guys and you get to like see how they feel and like their insecurities, and you get to see his friend group, and it just gives happy vibes. And I really liked it, and it was very much like, you could tell he was trying to figure out like who he was. And again, that must be a theme that I really like, where people kind of like come into themselves. But this one was a cute one and gave very happy, like fluffy, easy read vibe. The most beautiful book that I bought so far this year are actually 2 books, and I'm gonna show you the first one, which I'm sure you guys have seen, Happy Place by Emily Henry. Love this book so much. It's about a couple who they like used to date, but they broke up, and their friend asked them to go on this like trip, and they always take like a yearly like annual trip as friends. And so while they're on this trip, they don't want to tell people that they broke up and like cause drama, so they pretend to date and fake date. And you guys can probably imagine what happens. It was very good. Like, I love this book. Another book that has a great cover is Love is a Revolution by Renee Watson. I didn't really care for this book. I think I rated this one 2 stars, and I didn't care for it because it's about a girl who pretty much all of her like friends are very like into saving the planet. Like, they want to really like revolutionize like their activism and like make sure that they're making the world a better place, and she doesn't really want to, but she really like got upset when they wanted to, and she liked this guy who was very much like an activist, so she pretended to be an activist so that he could like her. And I think I would have liked this book if she hadn't lied like the entire book. Like, literally up until the very end she was lying about like very small things, where I kind of wish that halfway through the book she stopped lying so they could kind of like rekindle-ish their romance. But it was just a book of her pretending to be an activist when she's not, and kind of blows up, and it just, I don't know, I feel like I wish that she stopped lying a little bit towards the middle so I could like her more. She was very unlikable, but I love the cover of this book. It was very cute, along with this one. Now let's get into the books that I want to read this year. There are actually 3 books that I want to read this year, and then I'll get into like the series. The Way I Used to Be is a book that I've never read, but I really want to read. It says, I want to get as far away from the past as possible, be as different from that girl as I can. And this is taking place in 4 parts over freshman, sophomore, junior, and senior year. And this is a book that I've heard about all over TikTok. It's a debut novel, and pretty much the girl in the book, I think she goes through like very heavy trauma and has to kind of work through it in those years, and it just looked like it was a really good book. Another book that I really want to read is Restore Me, which so many of you guys have said this is good. This is by J.L. Seegers. And oh, The Way I Used to Be is by Amber Smith. And Restore Me is a book that it says once in a lifetime love doesn't happen twice, right? Dominique Alexander is my late husband's best friend and the last man on the earth that I should want. He's arrogant, dismissive, and up until recently has only ever used those dark eyes of his to look right through me. And then it tells like Dominique's perspective and pretty much saying that he like doesn't really care for Sloane. And it's like an enemies to lovers type of situation, because obviously it's her late husband's best friend, but they're kind of like put together after one drunken night, and he like saves her, and so then they're connected in that way, and it just looks so good. And so many people talk about how this is like one of the best love stories they've ever read. Another book that I really want to read is The Problem with Forever by Jennifer Lynn Armentrout. She actually wrote the book Wait for You. Let me see, I think it's right here. And this was actually a book that I loved this year, and she wrote it and I was literally obsessed. I think she writes a Blood and Ash series, so I was surprised that she writes romance and she also writes fantasy. But I want to read this because it says on the back, growing up, Mallory Dodge learned that the best way to survive was to say nothing, and even though it's been 4 years since her nightmare ended, she's beginning to worry that the fear that holds her back will last a lifetime. Now, after years of homeschooling, Mallory must face a new milestone, spending her senior year to public high school, but she never imagined to run into Ryder Stark, the friend and protector she hasn't seen since childhood, on her very first day. It doesn't take long for Mallory to realize that the connection she shared with Ryder never faded, yet soon it becomes apparent that she's not the only one grappling with lingering scars from the past. And as she watches Ryder's life spiral out of control, Mallory must make a choice between staying silent and speaking out for the people she loves, the life she wants, and the truths that need to be heard. Her writing is just so good. I found myself so captivated in Wait for You that as I was reading this book, I ordered the rest of the series. So I can't wait to read this one. For a different series that I want to finish, there are tons. I want to finish the Grip series. I've read Flow, which is the first book in this series, and I own the rest, which the second book is Still, and the third book is, or the second book is Grip, and the third book is Still. And this is about pretty much a couple, I guess not a couple, because initially they're just like people that they're not a couple. And This girl, she goes to reunite with her brother, who he's like a musician, and while she's there, she meets his best friend, who his name is Grip. He's also a musician, and they like connect, but she kind of finds out some things that make her like not really want to connect with him. And it's very good. The first book kind of leaves you on a cliffhanger, so I'm happy and excited to hop into these two. And then the next book next books that I want to read are the rest of the Magnolia Park series. Right now I'm reading Daisy Hates. I'm about halfway through. And then I have to get into Long Way Home and The Great Undoing, which her books literally feel like I'm watching a movie. Like, just there's so much dialogue that I love. It just is very easy to read. And then the last series that I definitely want to get into by the end of the year is this series that everyone's talking about by Elsie Silver. I bought Flawless, Powerless, and Heartless, and these are kind of like country, like Western type books. Like I think one book is about like a cowboy and they're like on a ranch, and I just thought it would give summer vibes. I also heard that this writing is very similar to Lucy Score's writing, which you guys know I wasn't the biggest fan of Things We Never Got Over, but I love the writing, absolutely love the writing. I just didn't feel like Knox was a 40-year-old man. Like he just seemed very immature to me, seemed a little controlling, but the writing itself was so easy to read and so fun, and so I literally was like, you know what, I'm gonna eat this up because the writing is similar to Lucy Score. So I'm ready to read these, and I bought the whole series, and I think the new book that just came out is actually in the mail and will be here in July. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video and got tons of good book recs, and I hope that this little mid-year book recommendation tag is something that you guys like to see. If you want to see more like book recommendation videos like this specifically, where maybe you ask questions and I answer your questions, we could do like a little Q&A and maybe put it over on Instagram, and then you guys like ask me like what's the best like book for this or that, and I can maybe give you like different genres or like books in a genre. Let me know if you want to see that, because I would love to share more books with you, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye guys.